And we are live now.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone, and warm welcome to next webinar in the series of webinar hosted by Food Engineering Department. So, today's webinar topic is nanotechnology in food processing and preservation. This has been chosen keeping in view the competence of nanotechnology, as everybody is aware that nanotechnology has proven its competence in almost all possible fields, and food is not untouched. So, food nanotechnology is an area of emerging interest and opens up a whole universe of new possibilities for the food industry. So there could be many applications in food industry. It could be extending shelf life, improving food safety, adding preservatives, extension for shelf life, and many more. So it holds great promise to provide benefits not just within food products but around the food products. No doubt, nanotechnology introduces new chances for innovations in the food industry, but health concerns and other issues are also emerging at the same time. So question comes into our mind, what is the nanotechnology in food processing? Is this safe? How it is used? What could be the researchable issues? Understanding of nanotechnology in food materials and processing and preservations at the nanoscale is very important to create new and improved food products. So I'm glad to announce that our today's guest speaker, Dr. P.S. Vijaykumar, scientist at Institute of Nanoscience, Mohali, is an expert in the area of nanotechnology, and presently he is working as a scientist in the area of nanotechnology applications in food. He has done a PhD from TNAU Coimbatore, India, and postdoctoral from Pune. He has undergone international level trainings, especially in biosensors and remote control therapy. And he has 2 patents in related fields and also has published many research papers. So I hope our participants will be benefited by listening to our speaker. So with this, I invite Dr. P.S. Vijaykumar to the mic. Please.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Vijay Kumar. So before going to the talk, I wish to thank the head of the Department of Food Engineering, Dr. Anupama Sharma, for giving me this opportunity to give a talk on our work that is related one way to your institute, that is nanotechnology in food processing and preservation. I further extend my gratitude to Engineer Arun, who is closely associated with me to frame this program in this pandemic time. I appreciate you, Arun. And of course, all the audience, that is students and others who has taken time to attend this. Okay, so going to the talk. Yeah. So the talk, I think I'll extend for around 40-45 minutes. And this will have a small brief introduction about our institute, and followed by a small introduction about nanotechnology, as because most of you are BTech students. In fact, I prepared as a kind of tutorial. Okay, so and then what I have been doing in targeted therapy before joining INST, just a snapshot of one slide, and then how I am trying to make those targeted elements to fit to food industry. Okay, that is especially fruit preservation. Okay, so this fruit preservation work I will go in very detail, like how the design was made and how the material was synthesized based on the design, and then how the material is confirmed, and then what is the bioefficacy. Okay, this is because you should understand how the synthesis happens. Most of you are students, so how the synthesis happens you should understand, and then after synthesizing you should know how we confirm. You cannot say like, okay, I synthesized, right? You have to confirm that I have synthesized with scientific evidence. That will be explained, and then how that material suits for the preservation, okay, compared to the conventional formulation. And then finally a snapshot of single slide for all my other works, so that you get a feel what we are doing. Okay. So coming to the institute introduction. So our institute is named as Institute of Nanoscience and Technology. It is the first of the kind by Government of India to start to work exclusively on nanoscience. Okay, and it was started in 2013 by our first director, and followed by 2013, 2014 we were hired, and around following that 2015 there was another small intake, and so put together we were like 20 plus 35, I mean 20 plus 15, so 35 faculties of us are here. So from 2014 we are working in a transit campus. Okay, so the one that you are seeing on your right, the kind of orange and brown building, that is the transit campus that is located just 1 kilometer from Mohali Stadium. So here we were working for past 7 years, 6 to 6.5 years, and now we are about to move in next week. Okay, the campus that you are seeing down, the big one, very attractive one, a blue color with the blue sky screen, I mean a background, is the new building that has come up very well, and we are going to shift from next week, and probably in a month we'll start working there. And so far we were having a constraint of space and other things, and once we move there, since because it's like a huge building, so of the hostel facility, so we are going to take more PhD students as well. Okay. So what are all the areas our institute concentrates on? So we start like broadly it can be chemistry, physics and biology, and some interface area. So chemistry, sensors and diagnostics, soft nanostructure synthesis, that is kind of liposome based or polymer based nanoparticles, and then energy and environment, structure devices, computational nanoscience, strategic materials, nano for agri, that is where I come in, and cancer therapeutics. Cancer therapeutics is in fact a big group in INST, so some 8 faculties are working on it. And chemical biology comes. Chemical biology includes some kind of enzyme and other reactivity studies. Okay. So coming to my work, what I do, so that is food and agriculture is what I focus on. So initially the food is produced in the field, right? So when the crop grows, 2 aspects are important. Okay, one is production, that is marked as 1 under the ground in the schematic of the plant. Okay, 1 production, and then protection. Okay, this production and protection is done in the field, and it is widely widely monitored by fertilizer and pesticide. Okay, for the production you need the fertilizer. It is right from the macronutrient to micronutrient, everything is important. Even although the micronutrient is needed in a lesser amount, without the micronutrient it cannot grow, and it has its own trouble in taking the nutrient from the soil. It is all because of the intensive agriculture that we have done for past 20-50 years that have spoiled the soil. Okay, and soil is turning slowly from acidic to alkaline. Okay, most of the soil is turning alkaline. When you see the forest soil, it will be acidic. Okay, and when you see most of the cultivated soil, it will have alkalinity because of the salt, because of too much of fertilizer that we have applied. So we have to reduce it, right? To improve the soil, we have to reduce it, and as well as to give the nutrient efficiently for the plant, we have to have some formulation which can know that this is when the plant needs the nutrient. At that time it should release. Okay, that kind of targeted fertilizer application system we are doing. Okay, I'll give a snapshot at the end how we have designed this and achieved. And then the pesticide comes. Okay, the formulation that can give the pesticide only when the pest comes. Okay, otherwise it should not be there. Okay, if it is available throughout the time, it is going to spoil the commercial yield also. Okay, the residual effect is going to be there. So there should be pesticide that should be available for the protection in the plant without being leached away. At the same time, it should not be in the yield. Okay, how we have designed that also you will see at the end, because this is all agricultural stuffs that we are working on. That will be a single slide that I'll show you. And then comes, after the production in the field, then comes the food processing and preservation, right? So these two plays a major role, because especially the perishable part, that is fruits. Okay, fruits are the most healthy and best material to take, but unfortunately it is highly perishable. Okay, so we need a packing system that can preserve it. At the same time, it should not have residual effect. That how we have designed the preservative, that we will see. And then processing is one way to improve the taste, and the other one is to improve the nutrient availability. Okay, for these two we do the processing. So this processing can be done in different ways. That I will give a small introduction, and then we'll see how the processing is done. So coming to the nanotechnology, so now I don't have to give a very big like lecture on nanotechnology. Now everybody knows it. Okay, it is not some 20 years before it was not so much famous. Now it is almost reached everywhere, and as like very strictly we deal with nano size, that is 10 to the power of -9 meters. Okay, so that includes the scale from 1. I think you are able to see the cursor that I'm moving. Okay, 1 to 100. Okay, in this scale comes the glucose molecule to hemoglobin to a full virus. Okay, glucose molecule to a protein to a full virus comes in this scale. Okay, just for your visualization, this is given. Anything, any material, it can be, this is all organic material we have given here, but any inorganic material also can be there, any physical material can be there, and that is all comes when the scale is between 1 to 100 nanometers. It is called nanoparticles, and these nanoparticles have specific property that is different from the bulk. Okay, that is that phenomenon is observed and studied as nanoscience. Okay, and this property is used or visualized and then like adapted for the application for the human benefit. Okay, that is called nanotechnology. Okay, let's see how it is. So this is about the synthesis. Okay, in the synthesis there is two ways. One is top down, as you can see here. Okay, so here you can see top down. Okay, the nanoparticle is formed from the bulk. Okay, we are grinding it. You are breaking the bulk particle to powder, and then powder, then you make it become, I mean, then the material become nanoparticle. Okay, the other way is bottom up, as it is written here. Okay, so you start with atoms. Oh, say for example, gold nanoparticle you want to synthesize. Okay, gold bulk you can take and you can put in the ball mill and you can grind it and you can get it like this. Okay, that may be very expensive. Okay, but you can buy gold ion solution or a chloride solution, and then you just add some reducing agent. Say for example, your own kitchen stuffs like lime juice. Okay, so it has citrate. Okay, that itself is a reducing agent. Okay, if you add it, it gives an electron to the ions. Okay, say for example here okay, you are having the ions. Okay, say if it is gold ion, okay, it means it will have Au plus. Okay, so this is another ion. Okay, so it will not allow the ions to come close to each other because both are positively charged. They will be standing mobile in the liquid. okay, then you are adding citrate, okay, then it gives an electron, okay, then it becomes zero state, okay. The gold, since because it is being very noble, it tries to take electron from anywhere in the environment. So when you are providing even like anything, if you add, it will immediately reduce, okay. And then once it is reduced, it loses the positive charge, right? Then it starts assembling one by one, okay, and then it becomes like this, and it may go on adding, okay, but we have to stop at some point so that the nanoparticle size is maintained, okay, for which we will add some capping agent, okay. It can be some some oleic acid kind of things, okay. When you are doing a hydrophobic synthesis, solvent based synthesis, then you will be using oleic acid or oleilamine based medium, okay. That will give a coating, and then it will not allow the particle to grow further. When it is in liquid, say for example when you are adding citrate, okay, the citrate itself will have the binding on the top, and then it will not allow the particle to grow after a certain size, okay. This is how the bottom up approach happens, okay. So here when you prepare a gold, it looks like bulk is not suitable. I mean, top down is not suitable, so bottom up is suitable, okay. When in the other way, when you go for carbon nanoparticles, if you have to assemble carbon atoms and then prepare a carbon particle, then you need a very high-end facilities. That will be very expensive, okay. You have to maintain perfect vacuum. In that perfect vacuum, you have to give a carbon source gas, okay, and that gas should be charred properly at high temperature, and then the carbon embedding happens and carbon particle will be prepared, okay. That will be very expensive. In that carbon nanoparticle synthesis, top down approach will be easier. You can get graphite kind of carbon, and it can be oxidized and it can form the nanoparticle. So based on the system that we want, we have to choose, okay. So that is what I want to tell you here, and we will see this in detail in the next slides. Okay, so I was telling about the nanoparticle synthesis, right? Next comes what is the importance of this preparing nanoparticles, okay. When you are reducing the size, okay, I'm marking with my cursor. I hope you are able to see that, okay. These are all the properties that is changing, okay, which is the nanoscience. When you are reducing the size of the particle, these properties changes from the bulk, and that is used, and a nanotechnology is formulated, okay. Say for example, first the physical property, melting point, okay. When you reduce the size of the particle, it becomes a nanosize. The energy is high on the surface area, so the melting point goes down, okay. This can be used for many applications, okay. And next comes the chemical properties, reactivity, okay. Say when you are having, go to the previous, in this slide, say for example in the bulk, you are having, this is the surface area, right? Say for example, you may be having 1 meter square, okay. So here, since because you are breaking down, those surface that is inside is also getting exposed, okay. Then it may be increased to 10 to the power of 9 times, okay. Just for your visualization, I am saying, okay. So the surface area is increased. Once the surface area is increased, the reactivity is increased. Say for example, if you want to take a catalytic reaction, okay, with a bulk gold, 1 gram of gold, okay. If it is in bulk size, it may be able to contribute for 10 oxidation or reduction reaction, okay. Then you are having it in a nano size, okay. Just maybe 1 microgram will be enough, because that much of surface may be there in your nanoparticles, okay. Next comes the electrical properties. Have you ever imagined 40-50 years before that carbon will be conducting? Nobody would have imagined, okay. Although there was some theory, nobody would have imagined that carbon will be conductive. Carbon is highly non-conductive, right? But today we are able to see that the carbon nanoparticles like carbon nanotubes, graphene not graphene oxide, graphene, complete pure graphene is able to conduct electricity very fast, okay, as much as the copper does, okay. So this is the application that we are having because of this property change at nano size. And the mechanical property, say the present day cars, whatever is coming, they are adding carbon nanoparticles into the metal, okay, the iron, in which they are adding carbon nanoparticles, and then since the carbon particle is already broken into very small size, it is very strong, okay, nobody can break the carbon nanotubes, it is very difficult, okay. So when you are adding into the metal, it improves the tensile strength, and then if you are seeing the tensile strength of the metal that is mixed with the carbon nanoparticles, it has more tensile strength than the material without the carbon nanoparticles. And then the optical properties. The optical properties probably we'll see more detailed. Okay, this is where I was working for my PhD postdoc for 10 years. Sorry for the break. Okay, so optical properties. When you are reducing the size of the particle, the color changes. Say here you are able to see that gold, okay, it is in yellow color, right? When you are reducing the size to nanometers, when it is spherical, okay, it is giving wine red color, okay. When you are increasing the size, I think here you can see at the bottom, okay, when you are increasing the size, the absorbance goes to the near red range, okay, that gives the blue color. The color changes to blue, whereas it is showing absorbance in the higher wavelength range, that is red range, which is called red shift, okay. So this we will see in detail in the next slide. So what is the application of this optical property being changed? Why it is yellow and then it is changing to wine red, and then why it is going to blue, and what is all the application? You may be wondering, okay. That is what will be explained here very in detail. Say for example, you are having nanosphere like this, okay. It is giving red color because of surface plasmon resonance. Okay? Surface plasmon resonance means, plasmon means the electron cloud like this. Okay? So the gold nanoparticle of 13 nanometer range will be giving a dark wine red color. It is because the electrons, since because you are condensing the particle into nano size, okay, those electrons and the nucleus of the atoms will start clubbing together, okay. This may be the electron of all the atoms, okay, on the surface, okay, that comes on the surface. Once it comes, because of the electromagnetic radiation that is available on in the atmosphere, okay, the positive and negative oscillation happens, okay. This oscillation leads to absorbance, okay. This oscillation equals to some frequency. Say for example, here the frequency matches with 520 nanometer wavelength, okay. So it absorbs that 520 nanometer. That is why it is giving wine red color. Say when you change this metal into silver of the same size, it will give 420 nanometer absorbance. So it is the unique property of the size and the metal that you are using, okay. And when the light is being absorbed, 520 nanometer, I am saying it is taking in, right? When it is taken in, it has to give out, okay. The energy that is taken in by the particle have to be given out. This is the rule of nature, okay. So how it gives out? It gives as a heat, okay. So scientists thought and visualized that this can be applied for the targeted therapy. When you are having some drugs around these particles and you are having a polymer that is thermosensitive, okay, you send this cargo inside your blood, it will be just circulating as an inert particle, okay. Then when you are shining a light, having a monochromatic light of 520 nanometers, okay, that falls on it, and then the surface plasmon happens, and then the oscillation happens. The energy need to be given out, and the energy will be given out as heat, and the thermosensitive polymer will get rupturing, and the drug will be released. Okay, that is how the targeted therapy was visualized with the optical hyperthermia based nanoparticles. Okay. So the next stage, when you are using 520 nanometers, it only goes to the surface. It doesn't go beyond the surface. Okay, and we all know from the classical medicine that IR radiation can go deep inside the tissue. Okay. That is how when we are in cramp or anything, then when we go to the doctor, he puts IR radiation for some time, and the cramp or coagulation of the protein that will be released, and so our cramp gets relaxed. Okay, so the IR radiation can go inside. So scientists want a particle that can absorb in the NIR range. Okay, only then it can be sent into the deep tissue, and the radiation can reach deep inside, and then the heating can happen, and wherever the targeted therapy is needed, we can achieve it. So for this, they increase the size of the particle. Say for example here, gold nanorod. Okay, in the previous slide, as you can see, in the previous slide I was showing the blue color, right? When the particle size is increasing, okay, say for example the plasma, when the particle size you are increasing it, okay, to micron range, and the plasmons are wide apart, okay, then they cannot oscillate in the same speed. Okay, it is the size phenomenon. It cannot oscillate in the same speed, so it have to oscillate in a lower frequency. Lower frequency comes in the NIR range. Okay, that is the phenomenon that is studied with the increase of the particle size, that scientists used to prepare a gold nanorod. In the gold nanorod, you are not increasing the size totally. Okay, in that way you are not blocking the vessels. Okay, you are increasing the size in one axis. Okay? And then the plasmons are wide apart, and then the oscillation is slower, and when the oscillation is slower, you get an NIR absorbance, and this is a transverse oscillation. This is longitudinal oscillation, and this is transverse oscillation. And then this transverse oscillation gives the same 520 nanometer absorbance. This is what I was working for, the targeted therapy. Say here, say here we prepared the particle, and then we want to use it. This was already done. As you can see, when you are having an aspect ratio that is 4, with a longitudinal length of 40 nanometer and transverse length of 10 nanometers, that is called aspect ratio of 40 by 10. Okay, that gives a NIR absorbance at 808 and also a transverse absorbance at 520 nanometer. But here again, the depth of penetration may not be very deep. Okay, we want to go very deep inside. Okay, so there is something called second biological window. As you can see here at the bottom, there is one more absorbance in our biological tissue, where 100 and 1100 nanometer radiation approx will be penetrating deep inside. Okay, we want to design a particle for that. So in the same principle as it was before, the nanoscience have taught us we have to increase the size of the particle, and we can achieve higher wavelength absorbance, right? But you cannot increase to micron range. One is the aspect ratio cannot be maintained. When you increase the size of the longitudinal growth, the transverse growth also will increase. Okay, this is controlled because of CTAP. Certain molecules have specific binding to one of the phase of the particles. Okay, so they will not allow one side to grow and it grows on the other side. But when you allow it to grow for a longer time, it will grow longer, and also little bit it will start expanding. So you will not get a NIR shift that you are expecting at 1100. Okay, so what we thought is other phenomenon, that is surface plasmon resonance hybridization. So here you can see that there is a rod over which this yellow shell is there. Okay, so there is a gap in between the dielectric surface gap is there. Okay, so there is a plasmon here and there will be a plasmon on the inner side of the shell. Okay, when there is a hybridization of these plasmons, you will find that when the hybridization is positive, you will find an absorbance at 1100 range. Okay, this we want to achieve as per the schematic. What we did, we took this gold nano rods and we put it in the silver with the citrate, and we were able to see that silver growth. Okay, you can see here an intense gold core and little less intense silver shell, and this gold core silver shell was again synced into gold solution. Since, because as I mentioned before, gold is highly noble, it tries to capture the electron from anywhere, right? So it starts taking the electron from the silver, okay, and starts depositing. When it starts depositing, it starts depositing on the surface, and the gold ions, I mean silver ions on the surface here on this gold starts leaching out, and the gold starts building over, and then we get a shell. Okay, this kind of gold nano rod in shell we formulated, and this can be triggered to give heat with the 1100 nanometer radiation laser. And when we send the injection here, and the particle will be roaming here and there. Unfortunately, this video is not working as because it is PDF file. And then when it goes and reaches here, when you shine the laser here only to the paint, the particle, the drug will be released. Okay, this is how the targeted therapy happens. Okay, so this is my motivation. I want to adapt this kind of targeted like preservative application or targeted agricultural formulation application for my study back coming to INST. Okay, so fruits are the best material to take, as I mentioned before. And in fruits, there are two types of fruits. One is climateric fruits and non-climateric fruits. Probably you may know, but like briefly, climateric fruits are the one that will ripen, that will proceed to ripening after the harvest. Okay, and non-climateric are the one that will not ripen after it is cut from the fruit, I mean plant. Okay, the non-climateric example, it may be lychee. Okay, so you have to allow the lychee to be on the plant to get ripen and get the taste that you want. But if it is allowed to that stage, it becomes highly perishable. Within 4 days, it loses its commercial value. Okay, because of various enzymatic reaction, and it starts browning because of the polyphenol oxidase that causes the lignin production. Okay, so it is not only the problem in the non-climatic fruits, it is also a problem in the climatic fruits. Invariably in any fruit, this is a problem, because in climatic, once you cut, it starts like go for a high rapid rate of ripening. Okay, so you have to reduce the ripening rate after the harvest, whether it is climatic or non-climatic. Okay, you have to reduce the rate of ripening. And the next one is the preservative should be antimicrobial, and the other one is it should help the fruits maintain its status in the environment, whatever the environment it is given. Okay, when it is left as such, okay, in the market, in the supermarket, it may be dehydrating. Okay, it should not dehydrate, it should retain the water. And other thing is, it may be kept in refrigeration. When it is kept in refrigeration at a high cooling temperature, it can give chilling injury as well. You can find some corky tissue in the apples and all, right? That is all because of the tissue injury. Okay, so all these three things the preservative should take care of. Okay, but mostly in the commercial application, the preservative that we are using is sulfur dioxide fumigation. Okay, you just have sulfur and you burn it, it will give sulfur dioxide, and it will react with the quinone in the fruits, and it will form quinone sulfide complex that will inhibit the polyphenol oxidase, which is responsible for the lignin formation and browning of the fruits. Okay, so this complex is formed, but this is not good for health. Okay, There are other non-corrosive preservatives that are organic acids that may be little bit good for health at the trace level. Okay, acetic acid, lactic acid, benzoic acid. These are all the acids that are already in the fruits. Okay, you know the fruits have citric acid, many acids, right? That is over the period of ripening, it produces many acids. That is because of the hormonal reaction that is happening in the fruit. And aldehydes, some esters are also used as a preservative. And this, how you have to apply is you have to mix with some edible wax, say with bee wax. Most of the time people may not use the bee wax, it may be some chemical wax, and that again spoils the consumer quality, fruit quality for consumption. Okay, so what we visualize is we want to have a material that should have the preservative, and since that the plant fruit needs the preservative, and whenever it is needed it have to release it. Okay, so what for which we chose carbon nanoparticle. Why carbon nanoparticle? That I will explain you. But the reason is you should have huge amount of preservative on it. Okay, because only if you are having huge amount of preservative, when there is a stimuli from the fruit, you will get the amount that is needed. Okay, you are not applying directly on the fruit, right? So you need high amount of preservative on the material, so when the fruit needs, it can be released in such a way that that can match the rate of requirement. Okay, so for which we need the nanoparticle. As I mentioned you before, the nanoparticle have a very high surface area. Since because it is having high surface area, it can harbor a lot of preservative on its surface, and when the fruit gives the stimuli, it can release it. Okay, so when you come to carbon nanoparticle, there are two types of carbon nanoparticle, carbon material. Okay, in general, whether it is bulk or nano, there are two types of carbon particles. One is sp3 hybridized carbon particle, and the other one is sp2 hybridized carbon particle. In sp2, each carbon will be having 3 carbon association, whereas in sp3 there will be 4 carbon association. The example for sp3 is diamine. Okay, here you can see this carbon is having 1, 2, 3, right? And then one more carbon is just behind it. Say here you can see one carbon is behind it, that is connected here. Okay, apart from these 3 bonds, so it is becoming sp3. 4 bonds are there. Here it is all others are sp2. Okay, fullerenes, carbon nanotubes, graphite. Okay, because these are all having only 3 carbon attached to each carbon, as you can see here. Okay, graphite. Graphite is the pencil material that we are using for writing. Okay, this graphite, when it is becoming nano, it is, if it is a single layer, it is approximately 0.3 nanometers. Okay, that is called graphene here. Okay, and this graphene, when it is oxidized, okay, this is what I was mentioning in the synthesis. Okay, in the synthesis of carbon, I said when you go for a bottom up approach from the carbon gas to graphene, okay, it will be very expensive, but you will get a very refined graphene like this. This will be very good for electronic application. Okay, and this is graphene oxide that is having many oxygens. Okay, this is achieved from graphite to graphene oxide by oxidation. This is top down approach. So this may not be good as good conductor as graphene oxide. This also can, but it may not be as good as graphene. Okay, it is graphene oxide. So this is synthesized by adding strong oxidizing agent. The strong oxidizing agent is created by mixing acid and KMnO4. KMnO4, you know, it is a very good oxidizing agent, right? Now people are recommending because of this COVID situation, they are asking us to wash the vegetables and fruits that we are taking from the market to wash with KMnO4, right? Why? Because KMnO4 is a very highly oxidizing agent. when it is it gives a very pleasant pink color, okay, in a very light concentration. In that light concentration, if you're dipping your fruits inside, if there is any virus, it will get oxidized and it will die. Okay, so that kind of oxidizing agent here we are going to add in a high amount. Okay, if you see, when we synthesize in the lab, it will give high fumes because it is not so diluted pale pink color that we are going to do. It will be highly almost like brown color. That much of salt KMnO4 we add with radical forming acid, and that oxidizes. When it oxidizes, these bonds are created, okay, oxygen bonds, and it is even here, right? Say if this carbon is broken and here an oxygen is coming, here a COOH is coming, okay, this all serve as a dangling bond, and the exfoliation happens. It will be a pile. It is a kind of thousands of carbon sheet. When you are adding oxidation agent, okay, these bonds are broken, oxygen is forming, and it is exfoliating outside, okay, in this fashion. Okay, this can be done with, initially it was interesting to see that they were synthesizing with cellophane tape. The graphene layer, if you put a cellophane tape and take it out, you get the single layer of graphene. Okay, coming to my work. The graphite to graphene oxide is synthesized by Hammer method. This is a very old method. People just modify it from lab to lab with different concentration, but it is almost the same method. Okay. So the schematic that we have prepared is why graphene oxide? Because graphene oxide has the highest surface area in the nanoscience. Okay. It has 1 gram of graphene oxide have 2,500 meter square of surface. Okay, 1 gram, if you take 1 gram, very little amount, okay, it will have 2,500 meter square of surface area once you are exfoliating it and you are having so much surface. Okay, that is the importance for this work, and that much of molecule you can load into the surface. Since it is so much of surface area, having so much of molecules, when the trigger comes from the fruit, all the molecules will be released and it will be as good as applying directly on the surface. Okay, so how we have tethered the preservative on the graphene oxide. It is a two-step method: first activation and then conjugation. Okay, so the graphene oxide is like this. Okay, so the graphene oxide is activated with 2 steps. Okay, to bind acid sensitive link hydrazone. Okay, that hydrazone is conjugated to the preservative. Okay, so when there is a fruit goes for over ripening, post ripening, there is a 3 times increase in the acidity of the fruit. There will be exudation of the acid from the fruit. Okay, that will start cleaving these hydrazone link that is sensitive to the acid, and then the preservative starts releasing, and then the enzymatic reaction that is causing over ripening will be quenched, and the preservation and the shelf life can be extended. Okay, so let's see how the synthesis happens. So in graphene oxide, here in this material, say if you are taking 1 gram of graphene oxide, it will have almost 400 mg of oxygen. Okay, 250 mg to 400 mg of oxygen will be there. Okay, in this graphene oxide, that is the percentage that is because of different oxidation condition that you are giving. The minimum oxidation that you give, it will have 25%. If you are giving a very high oxidizing agent and a very high oxidation concentration, it will have 400 mg in 1 gram of graphene oxide. Okay. So much of oxygen molecule. So if you see for the molecular weight of oxygen, then it means in 1 gram of graphene oxide, 10 to the power of 9, 9 into 10 to the power of 23 number of oxygen will be there. So that many number of preservatives you can conjugate with this material. Okay. So for which after having this graphene oxide, we modified with diethyl amine by adding this amine. Since because it is reactive, it is electropositive and this is electronegative. This epoxy ends are electronegative and it will cleave this epoxy and it will form this OH ends and this amine will be bound and this aminated graphene oxide is formed in the first step. Okay, next you want to bring this hydrazone. This is hydrazone which is very sensitive for the acid. Okay. Apart from hydrazone, there are other links as well. Acetal links are there and many other links are there. But hydrazone is very sensitive. Here we need a very sensitive cross-linker. Why? Because we need a release to happen at very mild acidity from the fruit. Okay. So this is the adapter molecule that we have chosen. That is nitrophenyl chloroformate. So this is a multi-purpose cross-linker that is available in the market. This can conjugate both hydroxyl and the amine end. As you can see, the hydroxyl also gets conjugated. This hydroxyl is getting conjugated here, and this amine is also getting conjugated. So now probably you will understand the reason why we have chosen the amine in the previous step. Okay. Here the epoxy is there. I said 400 mg of oxygen will be there, and in that 400 mg of oxygen, around like 200 mg will be present as this epoxy, and this will be cleaved and broken into two. So you are doubling it. So 400. Once again, you are increasing it to 400 points. Okay, and then you are having additional hydroxy. That will be another 200, so you are having 600. Okay, just you for your visualization I am saying. So this multi-purpose cross-linker activates both the hydroxyl and the amine ends, and then you are conjugating this hydrazone, which because this nitrophenyl chloroformate is very sensitive to conjugate with hydrazone. This forms the link, and this is the salicylaldehyde, that is the preservative that we have used, and it goes very well with the hydrazone, and we get this composite. Okay. Now this composite you have synthesized. Okay. Now comes the characterization. You have to prove to the scientific community that we have synthesized. That is the nanoscience that we have to prove, right? So first we have to say we have synthesized graphene oxide. Okay, it is a kind of sheets, right? So we take the TEM. In the TEM you can see all micron size sheets. Okay, although it is micron size, the thickness will be in nanometer range. Okay, in graphene oxide nanoparticle, you need not reduce the lateral size. Okay, only thickness you get the reduction, and the lateral size can be in micron. And sometimes it also goes to smaller range, then they reduce it and they get carbon dots. Okay. So here this graphene oxide is synthesized, and how you say for example you are having many friends. You are identifying each of your friends, right? How do you identify? Because the light falls on them and then the light falls on your eyes. Okay? And then it either absorbs or scatters, and then you are able to visualize this is X, this is Y. Okay, that is what the same thing we are doing. Okay, as I mentioned before, all the nanoparticles are having optical activities. Okay, so when it is gold nanoparticle, as I said, it was having ruby red. Okay, it has 520 nanometers, and nowadays you don't have to prove it with the TEM and other high-end equipments. Just after synthesizing gold nanoparticle, if your application is very strong, just one UV you have to take and prove that it is having a good absorbance at 520 nanometers, and then people will accept it is gold nanoparticle, because no other particle can give such a nice absorbance in that area. Okay. So next, here in the carbon also there is a good optical property, and it gives an absorbance at 280 nanometers. Okay, and then when you are conjugating with amine, it gets shifted. Okay, and then when you are conjugating with This all we are following it sequentially till the salicylic acid binding. Okay, once it is bounded with salicylic acid, you get the strong absorbance as it is here at 320 nanometers absorbance for the composite. And then the same optical spectra, that is FTIR spectra, can be used to visualize each and every functional groups on the material. Okay, say here we have graphene oxide, and when it is aminated, the amine has 1580 intensity absorbance. Okay, the FTIR spectra gives both the absorbance as well as transmittance. Okay, so here 1580 absorbance shows that it is amine conjugated. Okay, and the salicylic acid have the transmittance at 1780. Okay, this is getting reproduced here after conjugating with a little bit of shift. Okay, this proves that the composite is having salicylic acid. How like whatever you are adding should be in the composite, right? So to avoid whatever that is non-specifically bound, those that are conjugated with the hydrazone is specifically bound. Those that are conjugated, I mean lying there with the composite without the hydrazone binding is called non-specific. To remove these things, we continuously centrifuge the material for 3 times. Okay, you add water and then you sonicate it so that all the unbound material will come to the water, and when you centrifuge, the particle settles down and the supernatant will be having unbound material that you can throw. Okay, you have to, in principle, you have to do for free of salicylic acid. Okay, so that you know that all the unbound salicylic acid is removed and the material is there. And essentially it is approximately 3 to 5 centrifugation you have to do. You will find the material free of all the unbound salicylic acid. Okay, and then Raman, it is the spectrum that is invented by Indian scientists. Okay, it gives the inelastic scattering. Okay, so I said by absorbance of the wavelength, any material have the color and we are able to see that. And the other way is the scattering also happens. That also helps in the visualization. When the particle falls and the 2 particles move, and if it is having the same energy that is transformed from here, it is called elastic. Okay, there is something called inelastic, that is the scattering may not have the same energy, that is inelastic. Okay, that is what was found very sensitive by our scientist Ram. Okay, so that is helpful to visualize the materials in this condition. Say for example, carbon characterization will be very clear when it is done with Raman spectrum. And the graphene oxide, as you can see, when it is run for this Raman spectrum, you will find this 1300 and 1600 peaks as like this. The 1300 is the defect peak and this is the graphitic peak. 1600 is the graphitic peak. As and when the conjugation is increased, because of the more and more conjugation that you are giving to the surface, the defects increase. Okay, so the defect intensity is increasing with amination and then followed by salicylic acid binding. So next, I said the particle cannot be the TEM, since because it is giving only the 2D view, you know what is the size laterally, right? So it is in micron range, but 3D visualization only will give you what is the thickness of the particle, for which we do the AFM. Okay, so AFM is a tapping kind of characterization. It is like you are touching and seeing what the material is. Okay, so in that way, as you can see in the top left, this is the pristine without conjugation, the graphene oxide, how it is, and it is showing 3 nanometer size. Okay, which means it is approximately some 6 to 10 sheets are there, because each sheet is having 0.3 nanometer size, right? So it is having 3 nanometers, so approximately it should be 10 sheets there. Okay, and then when you are conjugating with the preservative, since because it is having, and we also calculated the conjugation by HPLC, and we were able to visualize that 180% of conjugation is happening, and that we have seen here. There is an enormous increase in the thickness. Here it is 3 nanometer, here the thickness is increased to 6.5 nanometers. So much of molecule is loaded. And then the size we can also see through the hydrodynamic. So the TEM, as I said, it is a 2D visualization, and AFM is a 3D visualization, and hydrodynamic size that is given by the scattering. Okay, so you keep the material in the cuvette and you have the material dispersed in the solvent. Okay, and through the scattering, and it is a calculation by the software, and it gives what is the size of the particle. Since because it is in the solvent, you get the hydrodynamic size. Say for example, your particle is 13 nanometer and you have conjugated with so much of drugs. Okay, when the drugs cannot, these are all soft molecules, like you cannot see in the TEM. Okay, so these molecules will have a hydrodynamic scattering effect. Okay, that scattering can be seen and see the increase in the size. That is what here we have done. When it is sequentially conjugated, every time there is an increase, and this is the methyl salicylate as such. And when it is conjugated with graphene oxide, you will get the increase in the size. And you can also, in the same machine, you can also see what is the surface charge of the composite. Okay, the graphene oxide don't have amine, so it is having COO minus ends, so that is highly negative. And then when it is amine conjugated, it is giving plus 15, and then the sequential conjugation changes the surface charge. And now coming to the application, we have to see and check whether the material is able to release the preservative. Okay, so we put the material in neutral buffer as well as acidic buffer. Okay, at 4 pH you can see that there is 4 times increase in the release, whereas only 10% of the salicylic acid is released in the neutral pH. Okay? And we allowed the banana juice to ferment for some days. After allowing it to ferment, after it reaches to 4 pH, we allowed that fermented juice to have the composite material, and we were able to see the same amount of release in 12 hours. Okay, after that we didn't follow it for 15 or 50 hours, as because it is giving a pungent smell. And then when the fruits, okay, are getting preserved, okay, the cell membrane do not get damaged. When the cell membrane is not getting damaged, these lipopolysaccharides, okay, lipids that is not getting damaged, then the malondialdehyde production will be lesser. When it is not preserved, the membrane will be damaged, so malondialdehyde synthesis will be more. Okay, so you have to take the fruit sample and check the malondialdehyde content. As you can see in the control, there is a huge increase in the malondialdehyde content, whereas the salicylic acid and the salicylic acid composite with graphene oxide is able to give a preservation to the fruit, so they are showing lesser malondialdehyde. Next comes the total phenolic content. This is another parameter to see what happens when the fruit is preserved. Okay? So when the membrane gets damaged, okay, when the fruit is there, say for example climateric fruit, you are cutting it and you are keeping it. Okay, it goes for a fast oxidation, it goes for the ethylene synthesis and other things. Okay, in this fast oxidation, the reactive oxygen species are produced, and these reactive oxygen species react with the membrane, and the membrane damage happens, and the many proteins, enzymatic proteins are there on the surface of the membrane, and those proteins, when it is coming to the coming out of the membrane, it becomes active and it starts showing its activity. Say for example, it is a phenylalanine oxidase, phenylalanine ammonium lyase. Okay, that is the first one that acts on the phenylalanine and forms the quinone. Okay, and then the phenol oxidase comes. Okay, that will polymerize the product quinone that converts to phenol, and that is phenol. These phenolic compounds or phenolic quinones are all good for health. Okay, and this phenolic oxidase, when it is membrane damage, it comes out and it starts using these phenol. Okay, and it forms polyphenols and lignin. Okay, by the peroxidase. So the phenolic content should continuously increase. Here you can see that there is a fast increase because of probably the membrane damage and the phenylalanine ammonia lyase coming out, and that forms so much of phenolic content. and then because of the other enzymes also coming out, probably these phenols are being used and it becomes almost saturated, whereas in the treatment there is a stable increase in the phenol. So we expect there will be a continuous increase in the phenol, whereas here the phenolic content may not be there, so the fruit may not be so good to consume. And the other thing is proline content. Proline is the increase in the proline content shows the ability of the fruit to overcome the stress. Okay, here because since we are treating the fruit with methyl salicylate and methyl salicylate graphene composite, here we are able to see that there is a increase in the proline content. Anyhow, in any fruit, when you are cutting and keeping it, there will be an increase in the proline content. When it becomes too much, the proline content becomes lesser. In the control, you can see there is a reduction in the proline content after some time. Okay, so the ability of the composite to increase the shelf life is proved with these three biochemical properties. And then the antimicrobial property, this methyl salicylate, as I said, the preservative should have all the three properties. First is it should have respiration control, and the other one is antimicrobial, and the third one is environment control to avoid dehydration and also chilling injury. Okay, this phenolic, that is methyl salicylate that we have used, have the antimicrobial effect that is checked with both gram negative and gram positive bacteria. And since because we are, the whole purpose of this material is it should not spoil the consumer, right? So what we have done is we took the to show that it is not affecting the human cell. The material with conjugated with the preservative was taken in a well method, in which in the well having a permeable membrane, the composite was taken. Okay, and this the cells are grown at the bottom. Those that is released only goes and reaches the cell. Okay, since because the cell medium maintains the buffer, the release is not that much, so you can see that the cell mortality is lesser in the composite. That is how we have proved it is biocompatible. And in the real application, okay, those particles that is sprayed on the fruit should be taken out, right? So what we did, we took a paper, okay, and put the nanoparticle with the water, the nano composite with the water, and then we did a vacuum filtration. Then all the particles settle down on the paper, and then you can simply take this carbon paper. Okay, that is what is this one, the carbon paper having the preservative, and this was wrapped with the fruit, and we were able to see that same good release is there for the preservative, and also the preservation effect also is there. Okay, it is given in the paper. Here I have avoided due to time. And then comes the I think the time is, there is no more time, so I will quickly go through the fortification method that we have done and other things in a single slide. So this is the schematic of the fertilizer that we have done. Okay, so fortification can be done three ways. Okay, after you get the yield, okay, the grain can be fortified or the flour can be fortified. Okay, there is another way, that is fortification while growing. Okay, so that can be done in two ways. Okay, one is agronomic way and the other one is by breeding way. Okay, in the breeding way, people try to isolate. Okay, so many maize varieties, beet varieties are being identified that is having high amount of antioxidant, high amount of iron, high amount of zinc. Okay, those lines are being crossed and developed into a variety having high amount of certain content. Okay, this is biotechnology or breeding method. Okay, the other way is agronomic method. Okay, in the agronomic method, you have to apply the fertilizer and improve the fortification in the grain that you get. Okay, so the iron is so much available in the soil. It is one among the top 4 nutrients that is in the soil, but it is not being made available for the plant because those iron are present as iron oxyhydroxides. So this will dissolute only at 2 pH, whereas the root don't have that much capacity to reduce the root environment to 2 pH. It can go from say for the soil is at 6 pH. It can bring it to 4 pH or 5.5 pH. So what we did, we made a composite having chitosan. Okay, chitosan, as you know, it is a biopolymer that can that closes, okay, contracts when it is with carbonate ions. Carbonate ions are there when the pH is 7. Okay, soil have so much of carbonate ions. Okay? So it will cover the FeSO4 and it will not allow the FeSO4 to leach out. Okay, but when the root comes nearby, okay, I said the root can reduce the nearby area to 4 pH. When it is 4 pH, the chitosan that is shrunk expands. Okay, then iron is released. Okay, so the main thing here, the targeting happens because not only because of the root pH. Okay, it is because of the soil pH as well. Soil pH have carbonate ions that closes the chitosan wrapper. Okay, otherwise these carbonate is highly reactive with the FeSO4. The FeSO4 changes once again to iron oxyhydroxy forms that will be dissoluted only at 2 pH. So far, whatever the technology is there, they apply iron as FeSO4. Here we have coated with chitosan and we made the difference. I will skip all these things. Coming to the other work, that is pesticide application. Here again we have used graphene oxide. When there is high alkaline pH, the acid hydrogen bonding between the polymer and the graphene oxide gets broken and the pesticide is released. Okay, this high alkaline content happens in the pest gut. Okay, when the pest takes the composite having the pesticide, because of the high alkaline pH in the gut, the pesticide releases and the pest control happens. Okay, and there are some particles, as you can see in the this graphene oxide schematic, right? These particles are copper selenide. These are semiconducting particle Chi and also nutrient. Okay, copper is a secondary nutrient and selenium is one of the micronutrient that is needed. Okay, selenium based amino acids are giving good brain growth. Okay, nowadays a lot of advertisements are coming saying about selenium's importance. Okay, of course at high concentration it is toxic, but our whatever that we are applying is in 1 or 2 grams, not more than 1 or 2 grams per acre. Okay, so this semiconducting particle will see that the half-life of the pesticide is reduced over time. Okay, so when you harvest, there won't be any more pesticide residing. At the same time, since because this graphene oxide carbon, okay, you say for example you go and touch your some carbon material, okay, and if you put soap, it won't go completely because wherever carbon binds, it won't leave so easy. Okay, so when we are applying this carbon nanoparticle as a spray on the leaf, whatever the rain shower happens, it won't go wash away, it won't wash away, so the pesticide resides, okay, for the pest control. Whereas when the since you are spraying it before the commercial mature part comes, okay, it stays there and takes care of the pest, and when your commercial product comes, you can take it out without the pesticide. And this also because of your semiconducting particles, the half-life is reduced and there won't be non-target residual effect. That is how the targeting is done in the pest control. And this is a kind of graphene oxide itself can act as a electron shuttler in the chloroplast, and we have seen that 1.3 times increase in the photosynthesis. Okay, thus we are working on the interface of nanoparticles with food and agriculture. Some outreach also I do, and I thank my funding agency. And Arun, I think that's the end. I think I have taken too much time.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your valuable address. In fact, my email is filled with so much of appreciation that too many concepts have been cleared by the parties by you. So, sir, we have many questions, but out of those, I have taken only 2 because of paucity of time.
Yeah.
So one participant has asked that do the selection of nanoparticle depends upon the type of fruit, uh, that depending upon whether it is citrus fruit or some other fruits. When we choose nanoparticle like silver nanoparticle, gold nanoparticle, does it depend on that?
See, this can be a uniform, I mean, a kind of universal solution, I can say. But if you want to have a substitute for graphene oxide, I would advise to go for silica, okay? Because carbon and silica are the most inert material that will not react by itself, okay? When you are going for any other material, gold, silver, or any other thing, okay, that may have its own reaction. Okay, then you have to study that. So to avoid all these things, carbon and silica are the inert material, cheap material that can be used in large scale for these kind of application. Packing, you need large amount of material. Okay, so for which you can choose this. That is how I advise. Okay, and based on the acidity, says citrus is highly acidic. Okay, and some fruits, when we were choosing also, we were struggling to choose the fruits, okay, based on the acidity. Okay, so, there is a huge window, 6 to 3, there are different fruits. Okay, based on the acidity you can choose the linkers. Okay, as I said, some acetal kind of linkers are mild proton active. Okay, some of these hydrazone are highly active, so that kind of standardization can be done with different linkers.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Sir, next question one of the participants have asked that do we have residual effects for the pesticides as we do for the with the nano rather than as compared to the traditional method? Do we have residual effects?
See here, that is what we have shown. Pesticide residues have been reduced. Okay, and these carbon nanomaterial residues may be in the field. Okay, so that part, ecological effect of graphene oxide should be studied. It is debatable. As I previously said, it is an inert material, most choosy for the environmental application, but still it can cause acidosis and other things. Okay, so these are all being closely watched by many agencies. Okay, because many applications are coming, they want to adapt it, and people in NIOSH and in India, DVT have also released recently some guidelines. They have included how to use these material for the agricultural application and food and application.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank
Engineer,
you for yes, ma'am.
hello. I have very simple question. May I?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Sir, you have told that nanoparticles are immersed or engineered into the food that they could be inorganic or organic. So, what would be the effect on bioavailability of nutrients, and also that flow properties or rheological properties may be changed? So, how could we know that what could be the food grade nanoparticles that have minimum potential toxicity? So,
Yeah.
research has already been done, or is this is the researchable issues for this?
No, see here, our design is, okay, we have used mesoporous silica. Okay, mesoporous silica is kind of clay material. Okay, clay is already there in the soil. Okay, that is for sure. We have patented it, and so a couple of companies are interested in it. Okay, so it is a clay material, there is no bio issue. Okay, and you are adding it to the soil. Okay, so it is a highly porous, completely hollow inside. Okay, it is a
Mm.
hollow clay where we have loaded the fertilizer and we have coated with ketosene. This is ketosene is also a biopolymer, edible to eat, and it is as per US uh, agencies, it is what is that, grants they say in your food.
Okay.
Sorry, somebody can help. Arun, grants, what is that? Generally regarded as edible to eat, right? Grants.
Mm.
So it is a chitosan is that kind of material. Okay, so it is all nano material that is made of edible to eat or already in the soil. So it is there no problem in this material. But of course, there are some studies where people are using inorganic material, as you have mentioned, iron oxide nanoparticles. They are spraying on the leaf, and they are showing increase in the iron content in the fruit. Okay, fortified
Okay.
fruits. So there, definitely the efficacy should be studied.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. So thank you, madam. So formally, I will move to the vote of thanks session. So I will like to thank Dr. P.S. Vijay Kumar, scientist at Institute of Nanoscience Technology, Mohali, for his keynote address at this webinar. I would like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Chindi Basudevappa, Dr. J.S. Rana, Registrar RIFTM, Dr. Anupama Singh, Head of the Department Food Engineering, Dr. P.K. Nima, Dean Research, and all the faculty colleagues who have supported. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, participants, for valuable questions. And again, thank you, Dr. P.S. Vijay Kumar, for your valuable address.
Thank you, Arun.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Dr.